Hey everybody, continuing with the Diary of Anne Frank. I've been watching YouTube lately since November for about 10 months, I guess, and I hadn't watched it in 5 years before that. Previously, 5 years, I became a YouTube partner and had a pretty successful channel. I made a few $1,000s, but then I went on a little outdoor excursion where YouTube wasn't available, and I finished writing my first book. So now I'm watching it again, and it's totally different now. Um, it's crazy, but I think it's a really good platform, and I'm really gonna try to build this channel and make it something really nice. And so I appreciate everything you're doing to help. All right, finishing with Anne Frank. Right. Let's see where we were. Okay, with that. Okay, we went through March. Okay, I remember the really long burglary is where we were at. Okay, end of part one. This is part two of Tuesday, April 11th, 1944. The married couple with the so previously there was a burglar and the family that's Anne Frank and the family that's hiding. They caught the burglars and one of the guy yelled out police, and then so the burglars ran off. But then a married couple saw the hole that the burglars left, and then they looked inside and saw the Anne Frank and the Van Dams, and they thought that they were the burglars. And so now the police are coming and they're worried about it. The married couple with the torch would probably have warned the police. It was Sunday evening, Easter Sunday. No one at the office on Easter Monday, so none of us could budge until Tuesday morning. Think of it, waiting in such fear for 2 nights and a day. No one had anything to suggest, so we simply sat there in pitch darkness because Mrs. Van Daan in her fright had unintentionally turned the lamp right out, talked in whispers, and at every creak one heard, shh, shh. It turned 11:30, but not a sound. Daddy and Van Daan joined us in turns. Then 11:15, a bustle and noise downstairs. Everyone's breath was audible, otherwise no one moved. Footsteps in the house, in the private office, kitchen, then in our staircase. No one breathed audibly now. Footsteps on our staircase, then a rattling of a swinging cupboard. This moment is indescribable. Now we are lost, I said, and could see us all taken away by the Gestapo that very night. Twice they rattled the cupboard. Then, right now, they're hiding from the police, the Gestapo. It's so sad what happens. Nothing. The footsteps withdrew. We were saved so far. A shiver seemed to pass from one to another. I heard someone's teeth chattering. No one said a word. But I know, like Anne Frank, she would want like me and anybody else to read this. She like talks about that too, though. She would love to have her words shared with the world. There was not another sound in the house, but a light was burning on our landing, right in front of the cupboard. Could that be because it was a secret cupboard? Perhaps the police had forgotten the light. Would someone come back to put it out? Tongues loosened. There was no one in the house any longer. Perhaps there was someone on guard outside. Next, we did three things. We went over again what was supposed to happen. We trembled with fear, and we had to go to the lavatory. The buckets were in the attic, so all we had was Peter's tin waste paper basket. Van Dam went first, then Daddy, but Mommy was too shy to face it. Daddy brought the wastebasket into the room where Margot, Mrs. Van Dam, and I gladly made use of it. Finally, Mommy decided to do so too. People kept on asking for paper. Fortunately, I had some in my pocket. The tin smelled ghastly. Everyone went on a whisper. We were tired. It was 12 o'clock. Lie down on the floor, then and sleep. Margot and I were each given a pillow and one blanket. Margot lying just near the store cupboard and I between the table legs. The smell wasn't so bad when one was on the floor, but still, Mrs. Van Daan quietly brought some chlorine, a tea towel over the pot, serving as a second expedient. Talk, whispers, fear, stink, fluctuation, and always someone on the pot, then try to go to sleep. However, by 2:30, I was so tired that I knew no more until 3:30. I awoke with Mrs. Van Daan laid her head on my foot. For heaven's sake, give me something to put on, I asked. I was given something, but don't ask what. A pair of wooden knickers over my pajamas, a red jumper and a black shirt, white oversocks, and a pair of sports stockings full of holes. Then Mrs. Van Daan sat in the chair and her husband came and lay on my feet. I lay thinking till 3:30, shivering the whole time, which prevented the Van Daans from sleeping. I prepared myself for the return of the police. Then we'd have to say that we were in hiding. They would either be good Dutch people, then we'd be saved, or NSBers, then we would have to bribe them. In that case, destroy the radio, sighed Mrs. Van Daan. Yes, and the stove, replied her husband. If they find us, then let them find the radio as well. Then will they find Anne's diary? Added Daddy. Burn it then, suggested the most terrified member of the party. This, and when the police rattled the cupboard door, were the worst moments. Not my diary. If my diary goes, I go with it. But luckily, Daddy didn't answer. There is no object in recounting all the conversations that I can still remember. So much was said. I confronted Mrs. Van Daan, who was scared. We talked about escaping and being questioned by the Gestapo, about ringing up and being brave. We must behave like soldiers, Mrs. Van Daan. If all is up now, then let's go for Queen and country, for freedom, truth, and right, as they always say on the Dutch news from England. The only thing that is really rotten is that we get a lot of other people into trouble too. Mr. Van Daan changed places again with his wife after an hour, and Daddy came and sat beside me. The men smoked non-stop. Now and then there was a deep sigh. Then someone went on the pot and everything began all over again. 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 5:30. Then I went and sat with Peter by his window and listened, so close together that we could feel each other's bodies quivering. We spoke a word or two now and then and listened attentively. In the room next door, they took down the blackout. They wanted to call up Copias at 7 o'clock and get him to send someone around. Then they wrote down everything they wanted to tell Copias over the phone. The risk was that the police on guard at the door or in the warehouse might hear the telephone was great, but the danger of the police returning was even greater. The points were these. Burglars broken in. Police had been in the house as far as the swinging cupboard, but no further. Burglars, apparently disturbed, forced open the door in the warehouse and escaped through the garden. Main entrance bolted. Kraler must have used the second door when he left. The typewriters and adding machines are safe in the back of the private office. Try to warn Hank and fetch the key from Ellie, then go and look around the office, or the pretext of feeding the cat. Everything went according to plan. Copias was phoned, the typewriters which had been upstairs were put in the case, then we sat around the table and waited for Hank or the police. Peter had fallen asleep, and Van Daan and I were lying on the floor when we heard loud footsteps downstairs. I got up quietly. That's Hank. No, no, it's the police, some of the others said. Someone knocked at the door. Mike whispered. This was too much for Mrs. Van Daan. She turned as white as a sheet and sank limply into a chair. Had the tension lasted 1 minute longer, she would have fainted. Our room was a perfect picture when Mike and Hank entered. The table alone would have been worth photographing. A copy of Cinema and Theater, covered with jam and remedy for diarrhea, opened at a page of dancing girls, 2 jam pots, 2 started loaves of bread, a mirror, comb, matches, ash, cigarettes, tobacco, ashtray, books, a pair of pants, a torch, toilet paper, etc., etc., lay jumbled together in variegated splendor. Of course, Hank and Mike were greeted with shouts and tears. Hank mended the hole in the door with some planks and soon went off again to inform the police of the burglary. Mike had also found a letter under the warehouse door from the night watchman, Slagder, who had noticed the hole and warned the police, who would also visit. So, we had half an hour to tidy ourselves. I've never seen such a change take place in half an hour. Margot and I took the bedclothes downstairs, went to the WC, washed, and did our teeth and hair. After that, I tidied the room a bit and went upstairs again. The table there was already cleared, so we ran off some water and made coffee and tea, boiled the milk, and laid the table for lunch. Daddy and Peter emptied the potties and cleaned them with warm water and chlorine. At 11 o'clock, we sat around the table with Hank, who was back by that time, and slowly things began to be more normal and cozy again. Hank's story was as follows. Mr. Slagler was asleep, but his wife told Hank that her husband had found the hole in our door when he was doing his round in the canals, and that he had called a policeman who had gone through the building with him. He would be coming to see Kraler on Tuesday and would tell him more then. At the police station, they knew nothing of the burglary yet, but the policeman had made a note of it and would come and look around on Tuesday. On the way back, Hank happened to meet our greengrocer at the corner and told him the house had been broken into. I know that, he said quite coolly. I was passing last evening with my wife and saw the hole in the door. My wife wanted to walk on, but I just had to look in with my torch. Then the thieves cleared at once. To be on the safe side, I didn't ring up the police. As with you, I didn't think it was the thing to do. I don't know anything, but I guess a lot. Hank thanked him and went on. The man obviously guesses they were here because he always brings the potatoes during the lunch hour. Such a nice man. It was 1 by the time Hank gone, and we'd finished doing the dishes. We all went for a sleep. I awoke at 2:45 and saw that Mr. Dussel had already disappeared. Quite by chance, and with my sleepy eyes, I ran into Peter in the bathroom. He had just come down. We arranged to meet downstairs. I tidied myself and went down. Do you still dare to go to the front attic? He asked. I notched, fetched my pillow, and went up to the attic. It was glorious weather, and soon the sirens were wailing. We stayed where we were. Peter put his arm on my shoulder, and I put mine around his, and so we remained, our arms around each other, quietly waiting until Margot came to fetch us for coffee at 4 o'clock. We finished our bread, drank lemonade, and joked. We were able to again, otherwise everything went normally. In the evening, I thanked Peter because he was the bravest of us all. None of us had ever been in such danger as that night. God truly protected us. Just think of it, the police as our secret cupboard, the light on right in front of it, and still we remained undiscovered. If the invasion comes and bombs with it, then it is each man for himself. But in this case, the fear was also for our good, innocent protectors. We are saved. Go on saving us. That is all we can say. This affair has brought quite a number of changes with it. Mr. Dussel no longer sits downstairs in Kraler's office in the evenings, but in the bathroom instead. Peter goes round the house for a checkup at 8:30 and 9:30. Peter isn't allowed to have his window open at nights anymore. No one is allowed to pull the plug after 9:30. This evening, there's a carpenter coming to make the warehouse doors even stronger. Now, there's the debates going on all the time in the secret annex. Kraler reproached us for our carelessness. Hank, too, said that in a case like this, we must never go downstairs. We have been pointedly reminded that we are in hiding, that we are Jews in chains, chained to one spot without any rights, but with 1,000 duties. We Jews mustn't show our feelings, must be brave and strong, must accept all inconveniences and not grumble, must do what is in our power and trust in God. Sometime this terrible war will be over. Surely the time will come when we are people again, and not just Jews. Who has inflicted this upon us? Who has made us Jews, different from all other people? Who has allowed us to suffer so terribly up till now? It is God that made us. It is God that has made us as we are, but it will be God too that will raise us up again. If we bear all this suffering, and if there are still Jews left when it is over, then Jews, instead of being doomed, will be held up as an example. Who knows, it might even be our religion from which the world and all peoples learn good. And for the reason and that reason only do we have to suffer now. We can never just become Neanderthals or just English, or representatives of any country for that matter. We will always remain Jews. But we want to. Be brave. Let us remain aware of our task and not grumble. A solution will come. God has never deserted our people. Right through the ages there have been Jews. Through all the ages they have had to suffer. But it is what made them strong too. The weak fall, but the strong will remain and never go under. During that night I really felt that I had to die. I waited for the police. I was prepared as the soldier is on the battlefield. I was eager to lay down my life for the country, but now I've been saved again. Now my first wish after the war is that I may become Dutch. I love the Dutch. I love this country. I love the language and want to work here. And even if I have to write to the Queen myself, I will not give up until I have reached my goal. I am becoming still more independent of my parents, young as I am. I face life with more courage than Mummy. My feeling for justice is immovable and truer than hers. I know what I want. I have a goal, an opinion. I have religion and love. Let me be myself, and then I am satisfied. I know that I am a woman with inward strength and plenty of courage. If God lets me live, I shall attain more than Mummy has ever done. I shall not remain insignificant. I shall work in the world and for mankind. And now I know, the first and foremost, I shall require courage and cheerfulness. Yours, Anne. That was like one of the most touching things I've ever read. I mean, I've read a lot of things about the Holocaust, but I've never had it summed up like that before. That was beautiful.